Dangerously Close. My guest today is Edward Ashton. Edward Ashton is the author of the novels Mickey 7, 3 Days in April, and The End of Ordinary. And also, most recently, Antimatter Blues, but you have to be super special like me to have read it yet because it's not available yet, but coming very soon. So, but take it from me, it's awesome. His short fiction has appeared in venues ranging from the newsletter of an Italian sausage company to escape pod, analog, and fireside fiction. He lives in upstate New York in a cabin in the woods with his wife, a variable number of daughters, and an adorably mopey dog named Max, where he writes mostly fiction, occasionally fact under the watchful eyes of a giant woodpecker and a rotating cast of barred owls. In his free time, he enjoys cancer research, teaching quantum physics to sullen graduate students, and whittling. What's up, Edward?
Hey, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate it.
That's quite a bio.
Yeah.
I wish I had written it.
Someone a while ago described it as delightfully quirky. So you know what? I'll own that.
That is a fantastic description of it. Hey, do you mind if I share just a really quick anecdote of how I first discovered your books? Just because it's kind of, I feel like, fate has brought us here finally to this podcast interview. So I became aware of you pretty recently. It was I guess November. It was during the midterm elections, and I vote at a library, and I wasn't in a super great mood about because where I live, my vote virtually does not have any value other than I'm symbolically making my voice heard. But so I was kind of in a grumpy mood, and just kind of looking around the library. Apparently, one of the librarians was a big fan of you already, and had put your book Mickey 7 on display. It has a great cover. I was drawn to it, and I was like, "Well, this looks cool." I mean, I was like, maybe I'll just read this in this long ass line. So I picked it up, and history was made because I couldn't put it down, man. I was like, this book is awesome. I read it all the way through. I took it in to go vote on some weirdly worded bills and kept it. And now I've read the sequel. And anyway, man, that's that's the story of how I first discovered Mickey 7.
Well, I'm glad you happened to notice it. I'm glad it caught your eye.
Yeah, and shout out the librarian who put it on display. They have great taste. Also, before we get really into the interview, man, I have to say a huge congratulations. I was unaware of this until very recently, maybe 2 weeks ago. I just found out that your book Mickey 7 is going to be a major motion picture directed by Bong Joon-ho. I saw on the cast you've got Robert Pattinson, Mark Ruffalo. So that's like the Incredible Hulk and Batman in one movie.
Yeah, they're not fooling around.
It's a lot of star power, man. Are you stoked on the film?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. I was able to travel to London to watch some of the filming back in September.
Oh, cool.
It was really, I'd never been on a movie set before. This is all pretty new to me. And they took me on a tour around. I was able to watch about 8 hours of the filming. I was able to tour the lot, see a lot of the sets that they had built and special effects. And it was really educational for me. I'm an engineer. I like to know how things work. And It's really interesting to me to see how people do their jobs and how people work. It was amazing watching director Bong work.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently he's one of the most meticulous directors in the world. They were shooting one particular maybe 20-second sequence. And they spent over an hour reshooting this over and over again with director Bong giving these just incredibly subtle directions to the actor to just sort of move your hand a little here, drop your elbow a little. And his producer was explaining to me that he treats every frame of his films like a painting, and he wants each one to be visually composed in a specific way. As a result, he shoots hundreds of hours of film for every hour that makes it onto the screen. But the results speak for themselves. In my opinion, the man's never made a bad film. I'm very confident that this is not going to be his first one. One of my career objectives now is to not be the man who ruined Bong Joon-ho's career. But I'm very confident that's not going to occur. So,
I guess for anyone listening who's not immediately familiar with Bong Joon-ho, he's the director of Parasite, Snowpiercer, The Host, so many great films. So yeah.
Okja, one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, he just. Well, I it's funny that you were like, I hope that I'm not the man that ruins Bong Joon-ho's career. I find that to be impossible. This story is fantastic. It definitely lends itself to film. I mean, that's actually partly how I found out that the movie was getting made. Is I had suggested some people were asking me like, hey, what are some books I should buy people for Christmas gifts? And I was suggesting your book, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
And that is how the fact that it's a movie came to into my sphere of knowledge. I mean, I don't want to like go on and on about the movie too long, but I guess like this is all knowledge people could find on the internet if they wanted to, so it's not really spoilers. Robert Pattinson is going to be Mickey 7. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, that's pretty cool. That's a cool casting choice. At first I was like, and then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I can see him pulling this off really, really well.
I had to think about that for a minute because they had me sign a non-disclosure agreement, which I actually worked for the CIA at one point.
Oh, wow.
And the security requirements that I had there were nothing compared to this. I mean, basically, if I disclose any information that's not public, they have the right to come to my house and murder me, essentially.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
So I got to be very careful about anything that I say. But that's 100% public already.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was worried about asking, but then I was like, I'm sure at this point. Also, when they tied his name to it, who else could he be?
Yeah. Now there have been tons of reports in the media about him and about Ruffalo, Naomi Ackie, and some of the other actors that are in the film.
And not to go just on a tangent here, but this is Brad Pitt's production company. Is that correct? Am I
Plan B production? Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The only reason I found that interesting, it was just something that I had read a long time ago by it was something that Chuck Palahniuk, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, the author of Fight Club.
Yeah.
It's something it was nonfiction that he had written, and he was talking about what it was like having that book that was kind of his, that was his baby. And, he had to hand it over to David Fincher and Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. And he said that he was on set and Edward Norton was already doing like first day rewrites of the script, which is, I think, a very common. I've heard that he's kind of hard to work with because of that kind of stuff. And I remember Chuck Palahniuk writing that was like very difficult for him, like watching his story and his book and his creation being kind of taken and becoming something that belongs to other people because they're creating a new form of art with it. I only bring that up to just ask, do you have any of those kind of feelings or reservations?
I mean, first of all, different authors feel differently about that. I am not a delicate artist.
Yeah.
I try to be entertaining and to entertain people. I don't feel that I'm writing things to change the world or that I'm producing something that'll be remembered 500 years from now or something like that. I don't see myself in that way.
Yeah.
Also, if a different person were handling things on the other end, I might be more nervous. I think about things like, I don't know if you ever, I'm extremely old. So I remember a movie called The Running Man. Did you ever?
With Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
I'm a gigantic Arnold Schwarzenegger fan.
Well, that was a terrible movie. I hope I'm not offending you by saying that was an absolute terrible movie.
I'm actually willing to bet that's one of the only ones of his I haven't seen.
Yeah. Well, you're not missing anything. It was based on a really good book, and the script just had nothing to do with the book. They just completely butchered it.
Yeah.
So if somebody not Bong Joon-ho were handling it, I might be afraid of something like that happening. But when he first became involved, I had about a 2-hour Zoom call with director Bong, and we talked through everything that he wanted to do. And I mean, I knew right at that moment that he was the right person to do this. He was the perfect person to do this. And I have absolute confidence that what he comes out with is going to be not true to the details of the book because, film is a different thing. The film has to be more kinetic than a
Yeah.
book. It has to be less thinky. That's just the way the medium works. But it's going to be true to the spirit. And it's going to bring new stuff to the story that I didn't or couldn't put in there. That's going to enrich the universe of sort of the story that I created. So I have no concerns or fears whatsoever along those lines.
And not to get out of line, and I know, like, just a couple minutes ago, I literally said I wasn't going to keep going on in the movie, but just because we brought up Mark Ruffalo. He's a fantastic actor. I really, really like him a lot. He's been in so much great stuff. I just want to ask, because of his age, I'm curious, is he Marshall? Is he going to be the
that is something that I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, I knew I shouldn't ask that question, but I just
it's the same. It's the same way with with the stuff that I had with the government. It's not that if I told you I'd have to kill you, it's if I told you they'd kill me.
Yeah,
and me, that's much more concerning. So that's something I can't talk about.
My curiosity can wait. I'll wait until the film comes out. I'm gonna be there straight up on opening day. As a matter of fact, I would
expect you'll start seeing trailers in the next few months, and it should be pretty clear at that point. I mean, they've already released the first teaser. I don't know if you saw that one floating around.
I have not. No, this just came to my attention. I was just like,
I
found out about it. I was like,
done. They wrapped filming in December, so they're in production. And the first teaser was released about a month ago. So it's pretty cool. You should check it out if you get a chance.
It will be the first thing as soon as I'm done speaking with you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the trailer.
Yeah.
So just kind of taking a little turn here onto other stuff. So you do cancer research. You teach quantum physics. You worked for the CIA. You write novels that get movie deals. I guess really my main question is, well, you think you're better than me?
I think I'm the luckiest person on the planet Earth is what I think. I have, I've had people ask me sort of like, how did you do all that? What was your plan to get to where you are now? I never had a plan. I'm like, I've drifted through life like a jellyfish. I eat whatever drifts into my tentacles, and that's pretty much it. But things have worked out for me in ways that are incredibly improbable. I mean, the idea that this book, the movie deal, the option agreement was signed before I even had a publisher for this book.
Wow.
Ordinarily that is not how things work. Ordinarily, like, a book becomes a bestseller and then it gets picked up to be a movie. This went exactly the opposite direction. How that happens, my only explanation is that my agent is some sort of wizard or something. I have no idea how he managed to pull this off.
Oh my God!
It's all been a series of very improbable random events that have all seemed to work out in my favor for some reason.
That's fantastic. That's true. I have never in my life heard of catching a movie deal off your book that you haven't written. That's a lot of faith for that movie studio to have in you.
Yeah.
And the publisher, and everyone. So wow. Obviously, you can't speak on CIA, which is fine. But
some of that stuff I can. I bet this was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. So
okay,
so I can talk about a few things, not any of the classified stuff.
These aren't necessarily, you're not in these ops still.
No.
But I'm curious, like, just you do very kind of like just I don't want to say flippantly, but you kind of just breeze over in your bio there that you are doing cancer research as well as teaching quantum physics. Which one of those things is kind of the main thing? Or
professionally, that's my day. I'm a cancer researcher. That's my day job.
Okay.
I run clinical trials for various drugs and evaluate the results, basically.
Okay, cool.
The quantum physics thing is like, that's something I do as a favor to my old PhD advisor. He teaches a class that has a section that involves quantum physics, which he's not entirely comfortable with. So I come in every semester and teach that section for him.
Okay, hell yeah.
It's not a professional thing. I'm not a professor.
Oh, okay. So okay, cool. You're just
that's just something I do for fun.
You just for fun know quantum physics and can explain it to other people at a graduate level. Okay,
Yeah,
cool, man.
yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah,
Starting to get to know you a little better. So actually, where I did want to start with a real question is the Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus is it's a philosophical cornerstone in Mickey 7, basically, and as well as Antimatter Blues, the sequel to Mickey 7 that I just read. The Ship of Theseus it's a Greek myth as well as a thought experiment, and I'm extremely curious to know, which resolution to the question you more closely adhere to. I know there's like several resolutions that have been put out there by people, like even Noam Chomsky has a big one, I think, and but I'm sure most listeners aren't going to immediately recall the story. So, can you share the story of the Ship of Theseus real quick before we get into it? Would that be fine?
sure. So the Ship of Theseus is it's a philosophical question that was first originated by Plutarch, the Greek philosopher, so more than 2,000 years ago. And the way he formulated it originally is, imagine that Theseus, the Greek hero, he's sailing around the world, and it's a long journey. And as he goes, his ship parts of it break down. A board breaks, a line snaps, a sail has to be replaced. By the time he comes back years later, every single line, every single board, every single nail has been replaced. Is it the same ship, or is it a completely new ship? That's the question. And this obviously is a very tight analogy for a human life.
Yeah.
And this is something that is informed a little bit by my biological research. So you're probably aware that right now, you sitting here, there's not a single cell in your body that was part of your body 10 years ago, right? Your entire corpus has completely turned over in the last 10 years. You are literally a completely different organism now.
I'm going to sound, I'm actually way out of like my area of knowledge, but does that apply to brain cells?
Brain cells turn over much more slowly. Yeah, much more slowly than other brain cells. Neurons reproduce very, very slowly. Your gut, the lining of your gut turns over every few days.
Yeah,
that happens really, really quickly. Brain cells are the slowest. Brains and bone cells turn over pretty slowly too. But the point is, your entire body gets replaced on a sort of a periodic basis. And the question is, does that mean that you are a different person or the same person? And a really interesting way to look at that is with a technique called functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is one of the things that I work with, which is the technique that allows us to look at what parts of your brain are active when you're doing different things. So for instance, we use it for pain studies. You can put a patient in the scanner and give them some pain stimulus, and you can actually see their pain center light up. And you can see how much it lights up, tells you how much pain they're experiencing. It's a really objective measure of pain. We can have them move their little pinky finger, and you can see exactly what part of their brain causes their little pinky finger to move. So one of the things that we can do with this is ask a patient in the scanner to think about something that they did yesterday, or imagine something they're going to do tomorrow. And when they do that, there is one particular part of your brain that lights up. We can then ask them, now think about something that your sister did a while ago, or that imagine something your sister will do tomorrow. A completely different part of your brain lights up to do that. That is a physically different structure within your brain. Now, what happens when we ask you to remember something 15 years ago? Which part of your brain do you think lights up at that point?
Is it the same one as your sister?
It's the other person. Yeah.
So you're imagining what someone else did.
Yeah, okay. The window is about 10 years. If you try to imagine something you're going to do 10, 15 years in the future, it's the other person part of your brain that does that work. If you remember something from your distant childhood, it's the other person part of your brain that does that work. That is why, from a psychological standpoint, things like anti-smoking ads that say you're going to get cancer when you're 60 have zero effect. They do nothing. Because on a basic fundamental level, that 60-year-old person is not going to be you. And you fundamentally, emotionally don't care what happens to them.
Wow.
Intellectually, you can think, oh, yeah, that'll be me. And, oh, maybe something bad will happen. But it doesn't connect. It doesn't connect on an emotional level, because on some deep level, that's not going to be you. And that was not you 15 years ago. on some very deep emotional level, and it's reflected in the architecture of your brain.
That is incredible. I have never ever heard of that research study ever in my life. I mean, in a moment, I do want to like apply that to Mickey 7 himself, because that's a huge question with him, which is, which involves cloning, also tech that we do not currently possess, which is being able to like scan a person's brain and download their entire memories or virtually their mind or whatever. All of that is incredibly fascinating with the biological standpoint and how humans think and how they think about themselves as a different person, as long as it's far enough in the past or in the future. But I am just a little bit curious, just like for you personally, did you ever take the Ship of Theseus question and kind of lean? Is there like one of the proposed resolutions that someone's put out that you find to be the most agreeable one, or do you have a personal theory on it?
Well, I mean, there's one thought that says that as long as you have the same memories, that's all that matters. And that the memories are the person, and this collection of memories and experiences, that's what makes you. And so if we record that on a computer, so for instance, Ray Kurzweil at Google is very intent right now on developing exactly the technology you were just discussing, the ability to record a brain. He thinks that is a path to immortality for him personally. And there are a number of people in Silicon Valley who believe this. And then there's another line of thought that says there's something ineffable about me, about this sort of standing wave of electrical impulses that are going back and forth through the 3 pounds of meat in my head, that if you transferred all the memories, but you don't make a continuous transfer of that particular, set of standing waves of electrical impulses, that's not me anymore.
Yeah.
Like my point of view, we all imagine ourselves as like a person sitting behind our eyes, looking out and like driving the machine of our body. And you can have another body that acts and looks just like me, but if that little person isn't in there, it's not me. And actually I'm dead at that point.
Yeah.
I actually lean personally towards that point of view. Like, I talk sometimes about the transporter problem from Star Trek. The transporter in Star Trek doesn't transport anybody. It dissolves you on one end and builds a new you on the other end.
Yeah.
And the new you over there looks just like you and acts just like you. But as far as I'm concerned, like every time Captain Kirk gets on that transporter, he's dead. He's been killed. You see him dissolve, right?
Yeah.
He's gone. And there's just a new copy of him floating around out there somewhere. And I tend to believe, if I were in the Star Trek universe, I would never step on a transporter. You'd have to take me places on a shuttlecraft.
Yeah. I guess there's one school of thought into this. And I wonder if this maybe like aligns a little bit with what you're saying. And that's, that we think in 3 dimensions. And if we were able to think, 4-dimensionally, that maybe this question would not be so complicated, so complex or hard to wrap our minds around. Have you ever read the book Slaughterhouse-Five?
Yeah, of course.
So sure. in that, I'm sure it's been a while, maybe, or I don't know, maybe you read it yesterday. But
I love Vonnegut. I'm a huge Vonnegut fan. So yeah, I'm totally here for this discussion.
Well, in that, Billy Pilgrim becomes unstuck in time, and not to go too deep into it, but he meets this alien race called the Tremalfadorians, and they explain to him that all time is, so they see in 4 dimensions, and they see time as one. It's like as a tableau, like as one just giant thing that can't be changed in any way. There is no free will. All time is what it is. So whatever, any bad thing that's happened, like when he was in World War II and the bombing of Dresden happened, that has always happened and it always will happen. And so the Tremalfadorians, the way they live their lives is they only look at the beautiful moments in time, and they look away from the bad moments. And time is more to them is just a still painting. And I know that was a bit of a tangent, but that is, I've had a hard time grasping some of these more academic arguments on the Ship of Theseus, but that one, maybe I feel like, does that kind of go with it a little bit? Like thinking that if you can separate time and space, and, time is a flat circle, that the Ship of Theseus is and always will be itself.
I mean, I'm not sure those two lines of thought 100% connect. I would make the point that when you're talking about Vonnegut, he actually experienced the firebombing of Dresden. He was there as a prisoner of war. and it messed him up really bad.
Yeah.
He had a lot of psychological issues related to his experience of World War II that he obviously played out in his fiction over the years.
Yeah.
But there's a reason he was so grim and cynical in pretty much everything that he wrote. But in terms of the sort of span of time relating to our continuity of experience, I'm not sure you can really say, because if you take our experience out of time and give us sort of that Truffaut-Medorian perspective where we can see how everything began and how everything will wind up, that's no longer a human brain. That's no longer, you're fundamentally no longer recognizably us at that point. You're some other higher dimensional creature.
Yeah.
If you want to look at someone who's thought about that a little more, I don't know if you ever read The Ophiuchi Hotline by John Varley.
I have not.
So he talks about there's an extraterrestrial race kind of like that steps outside of time, and they consider all intelligence in life in the universe to sort of be tiered into three groups. The first one is them and creatures like them who are able to step out of time. The next one below that is creatures who can perceive time in that way, but can't move through it. And whales and dolphins fall into that category. And then the last category, the lowest category, is what they call engineering species, which is humans, bees, and ants, who are all basically in the same category as far as they're concerned. So if you move us up to their level, we're not ourselves anymore. We've left the bees and the ants behind.
Would you please share the name of that book and author again? Because sure. I need to know this.
It's The Ophiuchi Hotline, and it's by John Varley, Varley.
John Varley. All right, that sounds awesome.
It's a fantastic book. It's a really fantastic book.
I am stoked, and I cannot wait to read that. And I love the fact that we are sub whales and dolphins. I feel like we are anyway.
Oh yeah, no question, no question.
I love.
I would trade places with a dolphin in a second. I wouldn't want to be, a dog or a bird necessarily, but I would trade places with a dolphin.
Yeah, well, speaking, I didn't bring this up earlier, but there is a slight Buddhist feel to the Ship of Theseus question, because in some ways it's almost like an unanswerable question, like something that a Buddhist monk might just meditate on and be like, well, this is, this question is so unanswerable to my perception of reality that it will help me. I think that's the purpose of a lot of those questions that they have, is think about this until you enlighten yourself by no longer caring, or whatever the
I think there's a lot of connections between all the great schools of philosophy. I mean, people have been trying to think about what are the best ways we should live, how should we conduct ourselves during our brief time on this planet, for thousands of years, and a lot of these schools have come to relatively similar conclusions.
And I would like to bring before we move back to Mickey 7, this just dawned on me while when we brought up the whales and dolphins thing. Other great moments in sci-fi to shout out whales and dolphins. Star Trek, when they have to when Captain Kirk and Spock have to go back in time to old Earth, because the blue whale is actually the highest intelligent species on planet Earth. Humans just don't know it.
Right.
And then, of course, the great Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when they're going to build an interstellar highway and demolish Earth, the only animals on planet Earth that are aware of this and leave are the dolphins.
So long, and thanks for all the fish. Absolutely.
So, man, there's just mounting evidence all around us. Whales and dolphins are the superior animals around here. We should treat them with a lot more respect.
I mean, we're very lucky they don't have thumbs. I think if they ever develop thumbs, it's pretty much it. That's it for us monkeys. I think we're going to be done at that point.
Well, that's the incredible thing. They live in a world where they have no need for it. So they live. I like to think that dolphins live blissful lives.
I mean, there's a serious strain of thought in evolutionary biology that the reason we are the way we are, the reason we've got guns and cars and houses, is because we were such crappy animals. We were just really bad at being animals. And it's not that we're so much more intelligent than everybody else. I don't think there's any reason to believe we're more intelligent than an elephant. An elephant has a bigger brain than we do. They clearly have complex social structures. They communicate with each other. They don't need to invent a spear because they've got two of them sitting on the front of their face. They never needed to invent any of these things because they absolutely dominate their ecosystem by themselves. And we didn't. We're not strong. We're not fast. We don't have big teeth. We don't, the only thing we've got is a rotating shoulder that allows us to throw stuff.
Yeah.
My daughter refers to humans as chuck monkeys, which I think is that's basically, we were an ape that learned how to throw stuff. And that's how we got where, and we had to do that because otherwise we'd be extinct because we just were not good at being a regular animal.
No, that is such an awesome theory. Cause you're right. We're not fast enough. We're not strong enough. If it's too cold, we die. If it's too hot, we die. It's like we had to make tools, and so many of these other species that could just as easily as have outperformed us just didn't need to because they were better designed animals.
Why bother?
So back to Mickey 7. Mickey 7's job is to be expendable. I'm not even going to try and get into it. I was going to say, can you explain what that job is and how someone qualifies to sign on to be an expendable on a human colonization journey?
Sure. So the basic premise of the book and where we jump in is that we're in the far future. Humanity has been more or less forced to spread out to the stars. It's as a means of survival. But it turns out this is a really difficult and dangerous thing to do. We were built to live on Earth. We're not built to live on these other places. And trying to colonize a hostile planet is an incredibly dangerous thing. Traveling through interstellar space is an incredibly dangerous thing. And so there's need for people essentially to do suicide missions, to do things which are somewhere between hazardous and absolutely suicidal. And so because they've developed this technology that allows the reproduction of a human body and also the recording and reproduction of a human mind, they produced a sort of underclass of people who are expendables, who have to do these suicidal jobs. And then if they die, they just create a new one. They pop a new one out of the tank and it's no harm, no foul. And so no one feels bad about sending this person off to their death because look, he's fine. We just got a new one out of the tank and he's A-okay.
Yeah.
And Mickey is someone who has ordinarily this job is done by convicted criminals and things like that. Mickey is an actual volunteer. He signs on voluntarily for reasons that, I don't want to spoil anything, that become apparent in the first few chapters of the book, why he was more or less forced into this as well. He's figured out by the first chapter of the book that this was not his smartest choice. This was not probably a great idea. He's already died 6 times at this point, and it's not been a good time. But this is a job that you literally can never leave. You can't even die to get out of it. So he's at this point he's stuck, and that's really the dilemma that he faces.
Yeah, you're right. He can't even die to get out of the job, and the jobs are things like, for instance, they have a fusion reactor. And oftentimes it's easier to send a human being in there and let the human being die than to send a drone, because the drone is going to get damaged on a long, extended space flight colonization mission. You've got limited materials, so you can't just keep burning up your drones or robotics to do these kind of things. And of course, as when most people would obviously think that when you land on a brand new planet, one of the first forms of life you're going to encounter, if it's a habitable planet, is bacteria or viruses. And so your expendable is going to be the first person that you send them out and expose them to the bacteria and viruses so that you can develop your vaccines. So, it does seem like a crucial job. Like, you kind of have to have an expendable. Ethically, it might seem like you shouldn't.
Right. And that becomes the question. So yes, practically it's super, super helpful. Ethically, without this technology to recreate someone, obviously it would be abhorrent to, bring along, for instance, a pen full of prisoners that you would then sacrifice one by one. But because they're able to recreate this person, they're able to trick themselves. The other colonists are able to trick themselves into thinking that it's okay what they're doing to this guy. It's clear to Mickey that it's not okay at this point, but there's nothing he can do about it.
So to swing it back around and tie the Ship of Theseus back into this, kind of where I was going with that is the Ship of Theseus comes up because in Mickey 1's training, so this is the very first Mickey. He's the one that signs up for it. Mickey 7 is the guy we get to know because Mickey has died 6 times by the time we're on this pretty far into this mission. And like you were saying earlier when you were explaining to me how the human body replaces most of its cells every 7 years or so. So what's the difference? You know, it's like the people that are training him when he goes through it, like when Mickey 1's going through his training and they're like, here's why it's this way. Here's why you should think about it in a positive outlook. Your cells are being replaced every 7 years or so. What's the difference if you replace all your cells at once or over the course of several years? It's happening either way. Just early on in this conversation, you had me pretty convinced that is pretty much the case, especially with the brain scan, where when you think of yourself from 15 years ago, you think of a different person. Mm-hmm. So I'm leaning even more in this direction now, which is, and like I said, we had already discussed this. They have the tech to upload and download what is virtually his mind. It's all of his memories and experiences. So the question is, does Mickey not have at least a form of immortality?
Yeah, he describes it as a shitty form of immortality, which I think is a pretty accurate way to describe it. They say a coward dies 1,000 deaths and a brave man dies but once, right? Mickey has to die over and over again, and it's not fun, and he has to remember it. He has to experience those deaths.
Yeah.
But most of us only have to experience that once. He has to experience it over and over again, and he's repeatedly traumatized by that. And again, there is this question, is he really just dying? And is the next him that comes out of the tank just a completely different person? You're right about cells being replaced. But the question is what we feel is our seat of consciousness really like this collection of cells inside of our skull?
Yeah.
Or is it, as I tend to believe, it's actually this sort of, like I said, this standing electrical waves that are bouncing back and forth through your skull. That's, that sort of, comparison to like an ocean wave, right? So an ocean wave is a distinctive thing, but each moment of the wave is made up of different sort of molecules of water.
Right? Yeah. Right.
But the wave is its own phenomenon. And in the same way, I think our brainwaves, our personality, our thoughts, that's a phenomenon which is separate from the physical matter that comprises the brain.
And I guess it's fair to bring up because a lot of people will think this way. You create a religious group in the books. The captain of the ship, or I guess he's not the captain of the ship. He's the boss. He's the big boss of
the ground commander.
Commander, Marshall. He's a natalist, and natalists believe that if you are not born out of a human womb, then you do not have a soul. And so his belief is that every new iteration of Mickey does not have a soul because he's a clone.
Right.
I can see that maybe we have similar views on bureaucrats and their value to society. But does he have a point about this? Do you think at all, or is that just kind of meant to show that he's a very narrow-minded guy?
Does he have a point? Again, you're getting into some pretty deep philosophy at that point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you could make a point that what they are doing with Expendables is on some level evil. You're exploiting vulnerable people to basically do you notice, I don't know if you did notice this, everybody else on this expedition is from the upper class of society, right? Yeah. They're the elite of the elite of the elite, except Mickey.
Yeah.
Mickey is the one sort of average middle class person who's on this, and he's the one who has to do all the dirty jobs, all the hard jobs, all the painful jobs. He has to do all the suffering. He's like the Judas goat for this entire colony. And you could certainly make a very strong argument that that's evil. That's evil what they're doing to him.
Yeah.
And so the natalist perspective that is that this is evil. Now they sort of, Marshall displaces is discussed with this process onto Mickey, who's really the victim here, who,
Yeah.
in my opinion, shouldn't be receiving the opprobrium for it. But I think Marshall does have a point that the whole process of using expendables is an evil one.
It's funny that you should say that we're getting into very deep philosophy, because I feel like from the very beginning of this, we were into the deep end of philosophy, far past my capability of holding up my end of the conversation. And I've really just been kind of like doggy paddling here, trying to hang on and, hang out with you and listen to what you have to say. But I do have something, and I don't know if this is just maybe, you know what, I'm going to call it a philosophical belief of mine. And I think it applies to this. Like you just said, Mickey is the only person here who's not in the highest classes of society in this colonization society. He's the only like middle class regular dude. He does the worst jobs. He gets the shittiest jobs. And he's treated horribly. And I feel like this is a thing this is in our society where, and I have believed this for so long. I feel like the people that have to do the worst jobs, like the most disgusting, terrible things that nobody else wants to do, those are the people that should be paid the highest. And someone like Marshall,
that's a very fair point.
Someone like Marshall, there's so many different ways, because he is military, I guess, in nature. But I mean, you can take what he represents and put him a lot of different ways. You could say, oh, a military commander or a CEO, or any kind of. The thing is, like, his job is one of the most worthless, and he does the least of any of the colonists, and probably enjoys the highest level of comfort and luxury. So
yeah, it certainly has been noted by more than one reviewer that this book is a not super subtle critique of current American capitalism. I think that's a fair point. And I think that's part of the reason that Director Bong became interested in the project, because that's something that's always been if you watch Parasite, that's the entire theme of that movie. If you watch Snowpiercer or Okja, some of his other films, that kind of critique is something that he is very interested in. And when we had our conversation, it became clear that the two of us were on the same page with a lot of these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. In so many ways, Snowpiercer, it just seems like it's the inevitable outcome of capitalism. It's like, if you push it long enough, that's what you have. You have a dead planet, mass extinction, and what's left of a class or caste society more.
I mean, capitalism in an unfettered state inevitably leads to a smaller and smaller and smaller coterie of people controlling a larger and larger portion of resources. That's been demonstrated over and over and over again. I think with proper controls, it can be a useful system, but we've been getting away from those proper controls for the last 40 years or so in some fairly alarming ways, in my opinion. So
I'm happy to say we made it through the insanely dense philosophical part of this. And if you wouldn't mind, man, I'd like to just ask you a couple of questions about just world building and just some of the stuff in the book that I love. And I'm just curious about why it's what you chose. One of the things, it's not a major part of the book because it's on a different colony, on a different planet, but it popped into my mind because we were talking about dolphins and whales. So I was just thinking about sea creatures. You have one planet. So these human colonies do not find many other intelligent life, whatever that may be, however you might want to define that. But one planet has an arboreal cephalopod. Like, am I saying this correctly? It's like squids that live in trees.
Yeah, tree squids.
Tree squids. And the tree squids, so they're intelligent. I guess they're as intelligent as people, basically. A similar thing, they have no interest in industry or building tools, nor do they have any interest, it seems like, in communicating with humans. So Was that did you just kind of base that on the fact that just that squids are just smart animals?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of speculation in terms of the intelligence of cephalopods on Earth. It's a difficult thing to measure because they're so alien to us.
Yeah.
They're, like the way that an octopus brain is organized, they actually have sort of separate little brains in each of their arms that control their arms, and then the one big brain that basically is engaged in a continuous communication with all of the 8 smaller brains, and how that comes together in terms of consciousness. It's fairly clear just observing them that they're very clever, very smart. The way that they're able to solve puzzles, the way that it's impossible to keep them trapped in a tank. They're constantly escaping and getting out and doing things. It's pretty clear that they're very, very smart. And I was just sort of wondering, like, how would that translate to more of a land dwelling creature?
Yeah.
And how would a creature like that was able to develop more of a coherent civilization look at something like us? And my feeling was it would be sort of a mix of disgust and horror, and they probably would want absolutely nothing to do with us. And that's each of those stories that I put in there about other colonies is meant to illustrate something that's going on Niflheim at that time. Obviously, I mean, that's a reason that I put them in there.
Yeah.
And also to give you some background so that you understand a little bit more the world that these colonists are coming from. But in that one, yeah, I was trying to illustrate the fact that it is possible to coexist, but the only way that 2 species like us can coexist is if they both don't have reason to be afraid, because it's hatred is an outgrowth of fear. And so if you're afraid of the other, that's going to turn to anger, and that's going to turn to violence. And the only way to avoid that is to not have to take fear out of the question.
Yeah, it's a huge leap to think that once humans have interstellar travel, that we will have evolved. I mean, we can't stop killing each other. So what's the possibility we wouldn't kill every single species we come into contact with that we can? And I think you added one species, another intelligent species in, and the problem there was that it was the most delicious animal on the planet. So so the colonists just eat the other like in other civilization, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't want
that was also not a super subtle commentary, maybe. But
no, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to go off on my own tangents on what I feel about factory farming or the cruelty to animals that we show, but I mean, we take sentient animals and torture them and put them through terrifying experiences just to extract their meat. So it seems like something we do.
You said you haven't seen Okja, right?
No, I have not.
You should watch Okja.
Oh,
that is exactly what Okja is about.
This conversation has already got me like a whole new list of things, like things to read, things to watch. I want to very delicately walk the line right now because I know that I could very easily spoil some very important stuff that happens in the sequel to Mickey 7, so I'm not going to do that. But there are some other best thing to do is just skip one species entirely. But there's one that I don't need to skip, and that is the colonists call them creepers. Somewhat like an insect colony in a way, but they also use biotech. They use they like have mechanized bodies. It's kind of complex, but I was kind of curious. It's like, is your inspiration for that like the way something like a termite hive or a beehive, something like that might operate? It has a prime intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to when I think about alien species, I try not to. It's really tempting as a science fiction author to just be like, okay, here's spiders in space. Here's here's tigers that are like people in space. I don't want to do that. So I tried to make them their own thing. They're not really like insects. They're not really like anything on Earth because they're not of Earth. They're not of our entire biological lineage. They're 100% their own thing. They have some physical resemblance, maybe to insects in some ways, but in other ways, really not. And they are, as we learn in Antimatter Blues, they are a hybrid biological mechanical species. So they have sort of a soft organic chunk, and then that lives inside of a hard mechanical shell.
You use the term ancillary a lot. Am I saying that right? Ancillary?
Yeah.
And so what it is an individual of this species. If a human is to kill one of them, the species doesn't take that as a murder or a killing of one of their species. It's more as like you had maybe taken a sample of them as a whole. Whereas humans, if when they kill a human, they think they're doing the same thing. They think they're just sampling an ancillary. Is that can you kind of maybe expound on what that means? Because it is kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, one of the fun things that you can do with science fiction is look at how two different cultures with completely different worldviews clash, and we see that play out when different human cultures meet, and we see how badly that can go sometimes. And so, and we humans, like, there's less genetic diversity among us than there is in one tribe of monkeys on a hillside. We're all basically the exact same creature to 99% accuracy. So how much more of a clash of culture and how much more misunderstanding can come into play when we're dealing with something that comes from a completely different biological lineage. And so the way that the Creepers society is structured, they don't really have a concept of valuable individual life. They have individual intelligence. They're not like ants that are just sort of little mechanical things, but they value the life of the collective, not the life of the individual. And they don't understand that humans don't think that way, in the same way humans don't understand the way they think either. And that's what leads to a lot of the conflict, because they're both doing things that seem reasonable and innocent to them, but each one's actions to the other seem horrifying and murderous.
Yeah.
And so that misunderstanding is one of the things that they have to overcome to avoid a Holocaust, basically.
That's the thing is, first contact could literally be something that we would not have the ability to comprehend what we have contacted. Absolutely. So I have one more question about Mickey 7, and it might be hopeful thinking. But one of my favorite things in Mickey 7 is that he is a historian of failed human colonization beachheads. And it's one of my favorite parts in the book is when he'll just describe to you a beachhead that failed. And, you would assume that I don't know what percentage you said, maybe 50% fail. I don't know. I don't remember the number in the book, but that sounds about right. And what are the chances that you might come out with a compendium of failed beachheads in the Mickey 7 universe?
That's an interesting point.
Because I would totally read an entire book of failed beachheads because they're so fascinating, even though it is depressing in nature.
That's something my publisher would have to be interested in. I would be very happy to write something like that if my publisher was interested in publishing it. So maybe I've got a call with my editor next week. Maybe I'll bring that up. I'll see what he thinks.
Just something to think about.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad idea.
Edward, I got one thing I got to tell you, man. We are dangerously close to the lightning round. The way this podcast works, at the end of every interview, we have a lightning round where I ask you a bunch of questions super fast. No time to think. You just answer as quickly as possible. The way things have been going for the past couple of months, I no longer even write these lightning rounds. Co-producer Colleen writes them. So when I get them, she just leaves it on my desk. I don't look at it. So I have no idea what I'm going to read you at the exact same time. So it's a surprise to both of us. They come in many forms. Today you've gotten a Mad Lib. So I'm just going to say noun, verb, adverb, whatever.
Okay.
Let's just jump into this. This is called Master and Commander 2. This time it's personal. Okay. A Mad Lib story by co-producer Colleen and co-written by Edward Ashton. Oh shit, I need a pen for this. Okay. Main character's name.
Doug.
All right. I'm in it. Adjective.
Corpulent.
Corpulent. I have a feeling this is going to be fantastic. Another adjective, please.
Weaselly.
This is main character's name again. That's me. Doug. Or another man named Doug. It doesn't have to be. If this sucks, it's not me. All right, verb.
Squeeze.
I love having literary people do a Mad Lib. Celebrity.
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Top of mind.
Body part.
Foot.
That's Doug again right here. And part of a ship. Sailing ship.
Keel.
Name of store.
Target.
Plural noun.
Goats.
And one more plural noun, please.
Shoes.
Oh my God, co-producer Colleen. Don't worry, we'll go through this very quickly. Doug, that's me. Part of a ship.
Rudder.
Store name.
Walmart.
Number.
Pie.
Oh, I don't even know how to write that anymore. That's close enough. I'll know what that means. Plural nouns.
Fans.
Doug again. Famous person.
Hillary Clinton.
And supernatural creature.
Mothman.
Do you know that I actually spent 6 weeks living in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Mothman is from? It was pretty cool.
West Virginia. I'm a big fan of the Mothman.
Oh, cool. Have you been to Point Pleasant and seen the statue and all that?
I have. Yes.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Some of the locals took me to where he supposedly dwells. It was very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Number
7.
And Doug again. I do a lot of shit in this. Motion. Oh, emotion. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say
Yeah, that made no sense. Motion.
that's a tough one.
Emotion.
Fury. Let's go
Fury.
with Fury.
And one more emotion, please.
Fear.
I promise we are almost to the end of this. Verb ending in ing.
Breaking.
Just consider this like a writing exercise to help you with your verb nouns.
Absolutely. I'm sure we got my next book coming out right here.
Topic.
Topic. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Music.
All right. Yeah, sure.
Music a topic? I guess that could be a topic.
Music is absolutely a topic.
Sure.
Talk show. Or like name of a talk show.
Sally Jesse Raphael.
Oh, Sally. Is she still ticking?
I don't know.
I remember I used to watch that with my grandma when I was a kid.
She had big glasses, right?
She had big glasses. Noun.
Noun. Axe.
And another noun.
Stapler.
Place.
Point Pleasant.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. Oh shit, we're done. Hell yeah. All right, Edward, would you like to know the story that we just wrote together?
I'm dying. I'm absolutely dying.
Once again, this is called Master and Commander 2. This time it's personal. A Mad Lib story by co-producer Colleen, co-written by Edward Ashton. A long, long time ago, there lived a man named Doug. He was known across the land for being very corpulent and weaselly. God damn it, it's not me then. Doug had a ship that was very important to him because he used it every day to squeeze. Because of this, he named his ship Brad Pitt's Foot. One day, Doug was cleaning his ship and noticed a big crack in the keel. He went to Target and bought goats and shoes and quickly made the repair. A week later, Doug noticed the rudder was also damaged. So this time he went to Walmart and bought pie fans to fix his beloved ship. Over the next month, Doug had to make even more repairs to his ship, so many that he thought he might be getting pranked by Hillary Clinton or haunted by a Mothman. Eventually, he had to replace every single part of his ship, which was not only emotionally draining, but also cost him about $7. Doug also fell into a deep depression, feeling fury and fear every day. He began questioning his reality and the meaning of all human existence on Earth. He stopped breaking and started writing long manifestos about music. Every day, he looked himself in the mirror and asked, "Is my ship even the same ship anymore? What does it all mean?" Then one day, while watching Sally Jesse Raphael, he realized the true meaning of life was not possessions like ships, but really the pursuit of axe and stapler and the friends you make along the way. He sold his ship and moved to Point Pleasant and lived happily ever after. The end.
Again, that sounds like a novel written by ChatGPT. I like it.
All right, Edward, I only have one last question for you, and it really is just where can people find your amazing books? I know you've written a lot of short fiction. You've got so much out there, and if people can follow you somewhere, all that stuff, all the good stuff.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Ed Ashton Writing. EdwardAshton.com is my website. You can find links to all my books, all my short stories there. A lot of the short stories are available free on the web if you're just looking for something fun to read. And obviously, you can get my books anywhere that you buy books, your bookstore, your local library. Indie bookstore is always great. So, and any place that you would ordinarily find that sort of thing.
Hell yeah. And guys, remember, read Mickey 7 before the movie comes out, because oftentimes if you watch the movie first, it makes it harder. For me personally, I like to do book first, movie second.
Absolutely. Yeah. The cool kids all read the book first.
Cool kids read the book first, guys. You heard it here first. Edward, I cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast today. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend, man.
Thanks. You too. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.